Hey, how's it going, everybody? Sean here for another edition of Sean Solo, and today we're talking about VR. It's almost here. The dawn is upon us. In about a week, I think next week, Oculus VR, the Oculus Rift, or whatever the fuck it's called, will be in actual people's hands, not just press and developers. Obviously you could have kickstarted a while ago and got the dev kit version too, so there were some regular folks out there with it. And then not too long after that, I think, like a couple weeks later, the Valve VR headset, the Vive, whatever it's called, that'll also be out. And then later this year, PlayStation 4 VR. Originally called the Morpheus Project. Now it's just called PlayStation VR. I don't know why they didn't just go with Morpheus. That's like a much cooler name than PlayStation VR. But, branding. Branding's everything. You don't want anybody to be confused. So I guess what I really want to talk about is whether it's worth getting any of these. I mean, granted, if you go with the PC side of things, like the Oculus or the Vive or the Vive, you're going to have a pretty hefty PC, which is it doesn't really surprise me or shock me or anything like that. The cheapest one, the most affordable thing you could get is the PlayStation VR, and that's if you already have a PlayStation 4, right? But even then, if you have to buy a console and the PlayStation VR, you're still about the same price point as the Vive. I think the Vive is like $800. I think it's $800. Oculus $600. PlayStation VR $400 for the base model, right? Just for the headset. And if you want to get like a bundle package of the game, move controllers and the camera, if you don't have any of that stuff, it's $500, which is actually not bad. It's not a huge dip in the wallet, I suppose. You kind of get a little bit of a savings there because PlayStation cameras anywhere between $40 and $60, depending if you get it on sale. And the move controllers, I don't even know if you can get them anymore. Probably at least $20-25 a pop. So, and then the game, whatever that game would cost. So there's kind of a savings there if you don't already have all the other stuff. I have Move controllers somewhere. I bought Move years ago. I don't know where they are. I'm sure I still have them somewhere. So I'll probably have to dig them out if I ever get a PlayStation VR. But you're not going to have them to play the games. They're built for controllers, and then there's going to be the optional experience of using the Move controllers. The glowing balls. And kind of reports came in, from GDC, during when PlayStation announced this. They also had a lot of press there, trying it out, getting their hands on it fully, and mostly positive, actually. Because they're saying, well, and even PlayStation came out and said, the PlayStation VR is not as powerful and the fidelity isn't as good, but we feel like this is a good experience for people. And most journalists, or enthusiast press, whatever you want to call them, totally agreed with that assessment. They're like, yeah, it's really responsive. The head tracking works really well. Even the move controller stuff works really well. Not very much lag. It's doesn't look noticeably worse than the Oculus or the Vive. Obviously there's a difference in fidelity, but it doesn't look noticeably worse. And also, PlayStation is going to be in the black with these, so they're not taking a loss on any of the headsets. And which kind of I guess Oculus and Vive kind of are taking a loss. They're actually having to sell it for cheaper than it costs to develop them, I believe. So they're going to be taking a loss for a couple of years, which is normal, actually. So the PlayStation thing was kind of shocking, but then when you really think about it, it's not that shocking. Because it's Sony. I'm sure they have proprietary software and stuff that they own that they can put into this that's not costing them an arm and a leg. Because they're not having to go through third party to get pieces. So there's that. But I was thinking about, is it going to be worth it? Every peripheral that's ever come out for whether, for consoles or your PC or whatever is usually more of a novelty. They have a really hard time justifying their existence. Same thing with, just speaking about PlayStation, the Move controllers actually work really well. In terms of, the motion controlling stuff, it's way more responsive than the Wii. But they didn't have any games for it, Even the Wii, something that was built around Move controllers, not a ton of games that were specifically used it that anybody liked anyways. especially, because it's awkward and stuff for most like conventional type of games. I don't think we just haven't evolved in gaming to the point where we're really comfortable with getting rid whole stock of like just a regular gamepad. So it's always a struggle. And it's a struggle because you have to get people to develop games for this stuff, and why would they do that if they know the pool of consumers is pretty small? So it's going to be kind of an interesting year to see whether or not like mass market it gets on with PlayStation, or not PlayStation, with VR, but if they have a chance, it's going to be with PlayStation. Because $400 in relative to the other headsets and relative to the idea of actually having VR experience, like, is pretty attractive. That's a pretty attractive price point. I mean, even I thought about it. I held off. I did not pre-order one when they went on sale on Amazon. And I think they're going to be on sale again coming up soon here. But I'm not gonna pre-order it right away. I think I'm gonna wait on it. Just wait until actual people, YouTubers, stuff like that, have it in their hands so I can get some kind of comprehensive information, whether it's really worth it. And then beyond that, I don't even know how soon I'll rush out to get something like that, because is there going to be anything fun to play? Is it going to be anything more than a novelty, like I said? And that's always the problem with this stuff. You know, because developers don't want to just make games exclusively for these experiences, because games cost a lot of money to make. And there's if not a lot of people are going to be even able to play them, why would they do that? You know, since that's what sank not sank the Wii, because the Wii was really good with first party stuff. Nintendo's really good at that stuff, but the Wii U, people didn't know how to implement their games appropriately. Not just the fact that that the power difference between the Wii U and the PS4 and the Xbox One and then your average PC is way underpowered compared to those. You have to develop for these controllers that are unique. So I guess I'm wondering how VR is going to deal with that. PlayStation says that by the end of the year there'll be 100 games available. But when they say games, what do they really mean? They probably mean mini games. And like I said, mini games are mostly novelty based. Is this something I'm just going to have a friend or two over every once in a while? It'll kind of be like my fucking Wii and my Wii U, where we only use those things and pull those things out. We have people over. It's like a party machine. You know, we'll go play Mario Kart or Super Smash or something like that. So it's kind of makes me hesitant to even think there's any viability here. I mean, granted, I think, you know, there's the the Gear VR, the Android one. That is going to get VR into a lot more people's hands. So, I guess the concept of VR will be more out there. Maybe that will make people more excited about it, wanting to have more, intense VR experiences, or more, thoughtfully designed VR experiences, or whatever you want to call it. So maybe that'll put, starting to plant the seeds in people's brains. But, honestly, I don't hear too much about it, outside of, the enthusiast press circles, in terms of being excited about it. A lot of times they cite well, it's something you really got to try this to understand how cool it is, which is probably fair. So hopefully they're going to come out with demo stuff in stores and brick and mortars and stuff, because that's really the only option they have. And then you have, and I'm only talking about the PlayStation side of that, because Oculus and the Vive or whatever, I think Oculus may be going to Best Buy or something like that. I think they have a few brick and mortar consumer places that they're going to be stocking shelves and stuff like that, but I honestly don't know for sure though. Because they've kind of already established that they're a higher tier one. They're the fancy stuff. That's the fancy stuff. It's the more powerful stuff, more capable stuff. But it doesn't matter. Those things could be the more powerful and more capable all day long, but if nobody owns them, then who cares? And then how do you develop, interesting experiences for VR that are noticeably better for being VR? Because I've seen a lot of first-person stuff, and I've even seen, they're doing, even, platformers with, Lucky's Strike, or whatever the hell the Oculus platformer that's coming in box is going to be. So they're trying all sorts of different things. It seems kind of interesting. It definitely seems like an interesting thing. But, like, I have not been sold at all. Like, there has not been, like, a VR selling thing that I've seen, a concept that makes me like, I have to have that. I have to buy one. I gotta have that. I'd say PlayStation is kind of, they're implementing something cool, and I think even the Vive has one too. It's like a virtual theater situation, so that you can sit on your couch and put on a headset and play any of your games, and it'll look like it's playing on a 250-inch TV. That's kind of cool. That would definitely be something that would, like, even if there wasn't a ton of games, I might even consider that, because that would just be neat. That would be neat. Although, but you have to have something strapped to your face. It's gonna hurt your eyes when you got a fucking screen that's this close to your eyeball. Like, that's gonna put some strain on it. I think I even saw some, like, Consumer Report type things that were saying that, like, yeah, you get major migraines if you have this thing on for more than a few hours. So there are people out there that are testing it and trying it out and, like, trying to figure out what the threshold is on that. So we'll see. I guess that's another thing that I kind of just want to wait and to see how people react to it. But I also want to see how these companies react to them, knowing that they're not going to sell a billion headsets. Are they still going to support it as ferociously as, like, if it did sell 1 million? You know what I mean? Like, are we still going to have, like, these cool experiences, even though, are they going to still develop for it, like, with fervor? You know what I mean? Like, because that's important to me. So it should be important to anybody. It's kind of, even at $400, that's still expensive. That's nothing to scoff at. That's not chump change, you know what I mean? You know, for $400, I could buy a bunch of ice cream. And I know the ice cream's always going to be good. I may get sick of it at some point, but I can take time and come back to it. But I guess you can make the same argument with VR. Bad example. But yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what the pulse is. Like, it's cool. We've all seen Lawnmower Man. Well, all of us of a certain age have seen Lawnmower Man. And, like, you know, it's not going to be like that, obviously. It's not going to be this completely immersive thing. Even though there are, what is that? I think for Rez, they have, like, a suit that has all these, like, kind of tracking things, and you actually play the game with your body, and you play it in VR, and it's supposedly really cool, but that's completely impractical. The Vive, if you want to use the full potential, you have to have, like, a giant room that's set up with, like, to be able to do that. Because they want to make games where you can actually walk around a physical space for real. Conceptually cool, but how many people are going to, like, have that ability in their homes to do that? And then if not enough people do, then why are you making games for it? So that's the thing, like, in some ways VR is, like, it's cool, it's like a cool progression, but in other ways it feels like they're kind of almost like trying to do too much too fast, and that's why I question whether or not they will, like, fully support it in the way they are implying that they will. You know? Because, like, VR is probably here to stay this time. Regardless if this stuff takes off in, like, a gaming sense or not. Like, the technology is going to be really cool for other stuff. For medicine. For architecture. You know? Things like that. It's going to work really well for conferencing and just, I don't know, other stuff. Like, so, it doesn't necessarily need to be successful in the game space to be a thing. Like, it's not going to be like 20 some odd years ago when they were trying to do VR stuff, and it just looked like, from the Virtual Boy to Sega VR, the Sega headset thing that was just absolutely terrible. It's not really VR. So, but like I said, I've heard mostly positive things about this stuff, so that does kind of get me excited. But is it, even the people that are positive about it, like, you know, the way they talk about this stuff, isn't anything past, like, that was really cool. Like, how is this going to make gaming, or, you know, storytelling in gaming, is it going to make it, like, more immersive or more meaningful? Is it actually going to successfully be able to do that? I suppose would be my ultimate question. Like, is it going to matter in the long run? You know, in the next 5 or 6 years, is it actually going to matter? Because it's going to take, like, 10 years for this to be ubiquitous, to be in everybody's home. You know, 10, 15 years probably. probably that far out from it. Because the hardware like needs to be so powerful, and like that is so expensive that just not your average Joe's just not going to have it, you know. So I guess, you know, time's going to tell with it. I am not going to be an early adopter with it, most likely. Well, most likely. You never know. I am mildly impulsive at times, so I could totally change my mind. But as of this moment right now, it's not that I'm not interested, but I just want to kind of just wait to see. And I'm kind of curious how many people are kind of in that boat with me. Like, you just got to wait and see. So let's see if it's worth it. Let's see a game that is exponentially better because it's in VR. That is kind of something I haven't really seen. Like a full game, a real game. Not a mini game, not like little vignette style thing. Because that's really all I've really heard about. Are these kind of short vignette experience type things. These immersive experiences. Like being tied to a chair and some psycho coming up with a knife. Like, I've heard about stuff like that, but I haven't heard of like a game that's actually, you know, in a more traditional sense, you know. Like, just for an example, like take something like a BioShock Infinite or something like that. Something on that like level that utilizes VR and is better for it. So there you go. Well, I think that's going to about do it for me. Like, I don't really have much else to say about it. Like, it's something I definitely have some interest in for sure. I'm a gamer. I really like technology. I think it's cool to watch it progress. But in terms of like, and I'm a mark for something like this. So that's why I'm kind of curious about other people, because I'm a mark for like the PlayStation VR. I should be like kind of into that more than I am. I expected to be more into it. The $400 price point definitely made it more attractive because that's feasible. Like, I can save $400 up by October. I could put my pennies away, and I could save, and I could buy one. So, I don't know. Are we really is this the dawn of the Lawnmower Man? Or is it nothing? Or is it going to end up just being a cool thing that they are never able to properly, like, build upon? Because that happens a lot with peripheral stuff. Think about all the peripherals. Like, I've named them before. Think about it, man. Like, how much... Or woman. Think about, like, how... how much you... If you bought that stuff, like, how much you actually used it. How many games actually supported it? I mean, the most relevant thing I can think of is definitely the Move. Which, there was a push for it. There was like a slight push, but then people didn't embrace it, so they kind of just forgot about it. So, in a larger way. I feel like they've invested more money and time and effort and stuff like that in developing this stuff, so it's probably they're not gonna give up as easily, but that doesn't mean that, like, developers are gonna really embrace it, because there might not be a market for it. You know, there might not be the product might not be in enough people's homes for them to justify spending, you know, $50 million or however much it costs to make a AAA game that is specific to a VR experience. Because you're just gonna, like, you know, you're cutting out too many people. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm just asking questions, man. Wake up, sheeple. Come on. Alright, everybody. I'm Sean. And I will talk to you next time I got something to talk about.